Hi everybody, Max and the Millions, Chapter 6. The summer holidays were almost over. Mr. Pitt stood at the school gates, practising his speech. Delighted to welcome you all back to St. Goliath's. As you can see, the Pitt building is finally complete. Not true. The builders had tried to explain to Mr. Pitt that 8 weeks wasn't enough time to build everything he'd asked for, but Mr. Pitt was insistent. The school governors were going to arrive at the end of the day, and if they didn't like what they saw, then Mr. Pitt was as good as sacked. He told the builders that if the work wasn't finished on time, they'd be facing a lawsuit so big it'd make their eyes water. Mr. Pitt wasn't worried. He always got what he wanted. Besides, he had a triumphant speech to prepare. As headmaster, I pride myself on placing students first. Care and concern for each one of you. Blah, blah, blah. He stopped. A boy with a suitcase was walking through the school gates ahead of him. You, yelled Mr. Pitt. What are you doing? This is private property. The boy stopped in his tracks. I'm Max, sir. I go to school here. Never heard of you, Mr. Pitt barked. Now get lost before I shove that suitcase. The headmaster saw Max's hearing aids and finally remembered who he was. He switched from anger to friendliness like someone changing channels on a TV. Max, how wonderful to see you. The shout made Max's hearing aids give a whistle of feedback and he winced. You don't need to shout, sir. It actually makes it harder for me to... Why are you here, Max? Term doesn't start until Monday. Max sighed and took a step back so Mr. Pitt couldn't spit on him quite as much. My great-aunt Meredith booked my ticket back for today, sir, he explained. I tried to tell her it was too early, but she just fell asleep. Can I stay in the boarding house until the term starts? Mr. Pitt grimaced. Is there nowhere else you can go? Max looked around. I guess I could sleep out here under my suitcase. Mr. Pitt thought about it. That's a kind offer, Max, but somebody might see you, he sighed. I suppose you'll have to stay in the boarding house. Thank you, sir. We'll bill your aunt for the extra days this way, please. Mr. Pitt grabbed Max's arm and marched him past the building site, trying to block his view. Now, Max, as you can see, the school is making some final tweaks and adjustments. Nothing to worry about, of course, but I must insist you stay inside the boarding house at all times. Max grinned. That's fine with me, sir. A weekend in the boarding house was exactly what Max wanted. He spent the holiday itching to get back to St. Goliath's to see if Mr. Darrow had returned. The caretaker would have found Max's castle by now and left him another message. Once Mr. Pitt was gone, Max could sneak up to the staff bedrooms and, Don't worry, you'll have plenty to do, said Mr. Pitt. I'm going to put you to work with the summer camp. Max's face fell. The summer club? They came to the boarding house and Max's heart sank. The front door was covered in streamers and stickers of cartoon unicorns wearing fabulous outfits. That's what it says there, can you see? Sparkly Pony Summer Club. Max gulped. Sir, isn't that for 5-year-old girls? Yes, Max, 50 of them, and they need plenty of looking after. Unfortunately, our regular staff were all hospitalised this morning when one of them touched a light switch. Max and Mr. Pitt stepped inside the boarding house. Every surface was coated in glitter and glue and sequins. There were 3 stereos playing 3 different songs at full volume and 50 girls in fairy rings screaming their heads off. This was Max's worst nightmare. He could lip-read a conversation with one person if they were facing him and speaking clearly, but adding another person made it twice as hard. It meant Max had to spend the whole time looking back and forth to work out who was talking. Looking after these girls would be like playing 50 games of chess blindfolded while someone threw tennis balls at him. Sir, should I really be in charge of all these girls by myself? Mr. Pitt looked horrified. What, one 10-year-old boy in charge of 50 young girls? Of course not. There'll be 2 of you. There he is now. Mr. Pitt pointed to a boy covered from head to toe in screaming girls. It took Max a moment to recognise him. Sasha. Sasha saw Max and turned ghost white. He looked Well, different. He wasn't wearing expensive clothes. In fact, he was wearing a bright purple unicorn onesie and had a butterfly drawn on his face. He shook off the girls like a dog trying to dry himself. "Max, what are you doing here?" Mr. Pitt clapped Sasha on the back, clearly having forgotten that the two boys were roommates. "Max, this is Sasha. He's been here all summer helping us run the club. Thankfully, he wasn't electrocuted with the other 12 volunteers this morning. Isn't that right, Sasha?" Sasha didn't answer. He was staring at Max like he was going to be sick. He clearly hadn't expected anyone to find him still at school, let alone dressed as a purple unicorn. Mr. Pitt strode towards the door. "I'll leave you boys to it. If you need me, I'll be upstairs. I'm going to check Mr. Darrow's room. Make sure no one's broken in." Max's heart clenched. "But broken in?" "Oh, yes," said Mr. Pitt. "This morning one of the builders noticed the bedroom light had been left on all holiday. A child must have snuck in on the last day of term. If I find out who set foot in that corridor, I'll expel him so fast it'll make his head spin." Max's head was spinning already. There could be a message waiting for from Mr. Darrow in his bedroom, and if it wasn't there, Max's model castle was still on the floor, with his name carved into the base. Several images quickly passed through Max's mind. Mr. Pitt finding the castle, Mr. Pitt expelling Max in front of the whole school, Max spending the rest of his life scraping Great Aunt Meredith's tongue clean after every meal. Mr. Pitt stopped at the door to pull out his phone, which had just started ringing. Max leapt at the chance. "Just going to put away my suitcase, sir." Max flew out the door. Mr. Pitt barely noticed him leave, and Sasha was busy trying to scrub the butterfly from his face. Max knew he might only have a few seconds. Run into Mr. Darrow's room, grab the castle, run out. That was the plan. Mr. Pitt caught him before he got back downstairs. Well, it didn't even bear thinking about. Max threw his suitcase into a cupboard and sprinted up the stairs to the staff corridor. Sure enough, he could see the light peeking from under Mr. Darrow's bedroom door. He grabbed the key from behind the painting, unlocked the door and threw it open. As he stepped inside the room, Max was struck by a thought. What if Mr. Darrow hadn't come back? It would mean that no one else had been in the room all summer. It would mean that everything would be exactly as Max had left it. It would mean that behind the door, time would have stood still for 8 whole weeks. After all, thought Max, what can happen in an empty room? Now I'm going to show you this before I start reading it. Okay, so you can see it kind of looks like kind of medieval writing, like an old scroll or something. It says The Book of the Floor, Part 1, The Creation of the Floor. 1. In the beginning, it's in Roman numerals if you can see it as well. The steps, so I said 1, but it says I. In the beginning, 8 weeks ago, there was nothing. The world lay scattered on the floor and all was in darkness. 2. Then the Great One opened the bedroom door. 3. He looked upon the darkness and said the word, and the word was ow. 4. And with that the bulb came on, the serum in the sand came to life, and it grew and spread until it filled the room from corner to corner, from the bed unto the bin. 5. Then the Great One left again for some reason. 6. But with the light of the bulb came life, and from the sand came the people of the floor. They each had a hair of different colour, some red, some green, some blue, but all were equal because all were confused. 7. They looked upon the floor and asked, "Where are we, and why are we here?" And many more annoying questions, for truly no one had the foggiest. 8. Then there came the wise man. He was older than time, and he knew the answer to all the questions. 9. He gathered the people together, and this is what he said. 10. Look around, you people of the floor. The Great One has made this place for us. And the wise man explained how the Great One had created the bulb and the floor and everything on it. 11. Then someone asked, but why would the Great One create us and then leave? That is just bonkers. And all agreed that it was bonkers. 12. The wise man said, he must protect us from monsters that live beyond the bedroom door. They want to destroy our world, and none so more than Demon. And the wise man explained about Demon, the terrible beast bigger than mountains who hated the people of the floor and wished them dead. And the people were greatly afraid. 13. But the wise man said, do not fear. The great one will keep us safe. And one day he will return through the bedroom door and take us all away to paradise. 14. At this the people of the floor were greatly excited and they cried, long live the great one. 15. And someone said, wait, sorry, who is this great one exactly? 16. And the people replied, are you serious, Terry? He's the one who created us. Try to keep up. 17. Then someone asked the wise man, what shall we do with ourselves until the great one comes back? 18. The wise man gazed upon the floor and was silent for some time. He looked at the vast world before him, at the bulb and the bin and the bed, and the desert sands that stretched from wall to wall. 19. Then he turned to the people, the reds and the greens and the blues, and this is what he said. 20. We shall build.